Good evening, fellow wormers. I'm just going to do a quick video. I'm going to go through a couple of my bins. I figured since I was down here going to go through a couple of bins, I just shoot a couple of videos on me going through a couple of the bins, and I figured I'd bring you along. So I hope everybody's doing well today. This is one of my bins. Hasn't been fed yet. Looks good. There's a little dry area. Sometimes you get a little dry area under your air intake areas. But this bin still has a little over a month to go. It's not ready to be harvested yet. But if you look at it, the castings look good. I mean, in this corner, there's some castings. They look beautiful. But we're just going to go through this bin and just stir it up a little bit. I like to turn my bins over. And in this way, you get air in it. And you move the worms around and fluff it up for them. There's nothing wrong with leaving it compacted. When they're out in the elements, the ground is hard. The soil is hard. They have no problem getting through it. But this particular bin was fed right in that spot. It looks good. Good moisture. I mean, there's worms all over there. What I want to do is just take the temp. If I can find my temp gun real quick. Give me a second. I don't see my temp gun close by, so we're going to scratch that. We're not going to check the temp. It is in the basement, and where I'm at in New England, it is chilly outside. So, but the product looks good. As you can see, it's a little clumpy. It's not because it's super wet or anything like that. It's got a good moisture content to it. But we're just going to stir it up. A lot of good sized worms in there. Let's see what we got. This bin, there's no paper stuck at the bottom. In one of my other videos that I shot, there was quite a bit of paper still at the bottom. And I think that's because, like I said at that time, when I was feeding the worms, I was feeding them on the top a lot of the alpaca manure, and I think they didn't really eat, and a lot of pumpkin on the top. So that's where they're going to stay. They're going to stay where the food's at. And I didn't stop feeding them like I usually do. I usually try to stop feeding them at least 2 weeks before any solid food, or blended food, I should say. I don't put solid food in, only the pumpkin. Everything else is blended. There is a lot of worms in here. They're looking good. Nice fat worms. So there's a lot of good moisture in here. I mean, if we talk about, I mean, look at that worm. That's a nice fat worm. Here's another one. There's some nice fat worms in here. And if you think about what a worm is, it's probably 90% or so water. They breathe through their skin. Too much water will kill off your worms. So if your bins are a little too wet, they can drown in that because they breathe through their skin. So that's another reason not to keep your bins extremely wet. And that happens when you're overfeeding them. I mean, if you start to go and say, wow, look at my population. When I put my population in, I had a large population of worms, but for some reason, my population is going down. What's going on? Run your hands through your bin. See if it's too wet. I mean, look at that. That's a nice fat worm. They're very happy in here. They're very, very happy in there. With the amount of moisture that's in the bin. This is the first time this bin has actually been turned over. Usually I try to do it a couple of times, and that way you mix up the bin, you add some oxygen into it, you fluff up your material. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, these castings look great. I mean, look at those castings. I would almost say they could be harvested now, but I stay true to my 30 days unless I find a problem, whether it's too wet or too dry. That's the only time I actually do my bins a little earlier. But this bin feels good. I'm not worried about the moisture. Moisture's good. They look good. There's tons of worms in here, so they're happy. Happy-go-lucky worms. So I was going to do a temp check just to see. I do keep my worms in the basement. It's not heated in this area, so I just wanted to check what the temp was. As I feel it on my hands, you know, the gloves, I have gloves on, always wear gloves. I mean, these are nice fat worms. Yeah, they're happy. There's a lot of moisture in there, plenty of moisture for them. They're very happy with their home. So I don't see anything wrong with this bin. I just wanted to go through it, fluff it up a little bit. I am going to feed them, but I'm not going to feed them any solid food. Well, not solid, blended food. I'm going to give them alpaca manure. Give them a nice helping of that. And for me, the second reason why I'll give them the alpaca is because I just shook them up. I just shocked them by mixing it up and moving them around. So I made them unhappy. So give them the alpaca and they'll eat the alpaca manure and they'll be happy with that. So, but that's bin one. This bin still, like I said, has a little over a month to go. It's supposed to be changed on 2/14. We still got some time to go. Let's see what other bin we can find. We got another bin here. Let's see what the date is on this particular bin. (2/8). This is another bin. Not ready yet. As you can see, some remnants of peels from something that I fed them. Probably with some blended food. Once again, it looks good. There are some fruit flies. You're always going to have fruit flies from the food you're feeding them, and you might not have fruit flies in one bin, but if they get in, we're only using screen for the air holes, so they will get in those holes. So you really want to, not really, sometimes there's really not much you really can do. I do put in, it's on the other side. I don't know if you can see this, but I put in a sticky, and that kind of catches the flies. That one needs to be changed. I'll have to change it, but it looks good. This one does have a lot of biochar on top, so that just shows you how much it's really broken down. That was mixed in with the bedding. And I mean, now you see the biochar on top. So they really kind of went through it and ate up the paper. Um, but had some real good castings on top. I mean, once again, in the corners, you always get a lot of castings in the corner. But once again, nice sized worms. Um, some remnants of some squash I gave them. And when you're putting in whole pieces of pumpkin or food like that, I mean, look at those worms. I mean, they're nice fat worms. They're happy. They're happy worms. They're happy with their, oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. I mean, that's gorgeous. Look at those beautiful worms. There's a lot of mature worms in there, a lot of big worms. Once again, this is another bin that for the first time is getting kind of tossed and turned over. So you do have clumps because it's been sitting. Here's a piece of pumpkin skin. Yeah, it's not overly wet, overly moist. I won't say wet because my bins aren't wet, but overly moist. But these castings look good. I mean, look at that. That looks good. I mean, look at those castings. I mean, I got a handful here and 2 hands, and there's nothing but worms in that. So, I mean, they're happy. There's a lot of worms in here. Very good. I mean, I'm pulling from the bottom. There's nothing but worms. They're not happy with me right now, but that's okay. I mean, pulling from the corners, you got plenty of worms. I guess I got to get back into making sure that every month or so, or every 2 or 3 weeks, I get back into turning over my bins. I haven't been doing that. And when I mean turnover, I don't mean turnover as far as putting new bedding or anything like that. Just pretty much just going through it and kind of turn the product over so we can see what we got. But yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with it. They're happy with their home. This is very, it's nicely moist. Should have been turned over several times already, but it hasn't been. I got a lot going on, so I need to pay attention a little more to my worm friends here and turn them over a little bit more, just so that we know what the bin is doing. But I've been allowing them to just kind of run on autopilot. I usually check them more than this. I might look at them and just make sure they got plenty of food, make sure it's not dry, things like that. I'm going to also feed them some alpaca manure. Oh, well, there's not a lot of alpaca manure in there. There's nothing left. I'll have to shred some up. But that's enough for them right now to give them something to gnaw on. But let's quickly, let's see. I'm gonna just check the moisture real quick. I didn't clean it off, I guess. Says to give it 1 minute, and It should go up to what it needs to be. If I read this the way it is, this would be, it's in between dry and moist, but I would tell you that the moisture on this is actually really good from the feel of it. So I'll have to wash this off. I haven't washed it off. I used it and didn't wash it off, but good moisture. And if you can see just the moisture content of the product, it looks good. I'm happy with this bin. So that's another bin down. Looks good. Worms are happy. They're not dying off in there. That's a good home for them. Let's see. Let's take a bin. This bin isn't going to be ready until the 28th of next month. I mean of February. This particular bin, as you can see, I fed it some pumpkin. They're devouring the pumpkin. I'm just gonna grab the pumpkin out. They're hungry worms. They're eating that. But this is a bin that wasn't done too long ago. So I'm actually just going to. Has a lot of biochar, a lot of paper still in it. This particular bin has a lot of alpaca beans in it. So I'm surprised that they're actually devouring the pumpkin as much as they are, because there's a lot of alpaca in this particular bedding. Whole alpaca beans. I put that in this particular bin just to see how it would do, if they would eat it. They break it down. It breaks down some also as the time goes on. But, yeah. Yeah, this bin is fine. A lot of worms. A lot of alpaca beans. I can just feel them through my hands. So, I'm shocked that they're actually even been coming up to eat the pumpkin. But there's a lot of worms in there. Still a lot of bedding. As you can see, there's still a lot of newspaper in there. As far as the level, we're still up. Basically, after I just got done mixing that up, we're right up to basically the 5 inches of bedding that I put in here. This is the alpaca. I mean, that's what the beans look like. They're in there. And as it starts to break down, they'll eat it. So sometimes with the ones I might put alpaca in, usually I do shred it. I won't have to feed them for probably the first month, because they're just going to go to town on the alpaca manure that's in there. But they like that pumpkin also. I'm just going to break off some of this so I can get it down in there. A couple of worms on there. But I'm just going to break off some of this shell. And push it down in there. Let them go back to town on it. Just going to break off some of the skin. Put it in there. Let them have fun with it. Usually this bin was done on 11/28. Usually by now that pumpkin, I don't know when I put that pumpkin in there, but probably about 2 weeks ago I put the pumpkin in there. So sometime in December. they would have devoured that already. There would be nothing left to that. They were big pieces of pumpkin. But as you see with the alpaca beans in there, they're kind of living on that also. So that's another good bin. So happy with that bin. I don't really see any mites in, not mites. I don't mean to say mites. I meant to say I don't see any of the fruit flies in here like I seen in the last one. And that's probably also because of the alpaca manure in there. They're not bothering it. So that's another good bin. That's a good bin all set up. So that's 3 bins.